Hey everyone, and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore, and this week's episode is a bit of a follow-up to an episode we did a few weeks ago with two candidates for statewide office, Fred Dorrell, who's the Democratic candidate for Labor Commissioner, and Kimberly Fobbs, who is the Democratic candidate for the Insurance Commissioner. They have been traveling the state together, and in some ways they're a bit of an unlikely duo. When you first meet them, you might not expect them to be friends, and since they're both campaigning statewide and they're both Democrats and they're both from Tulsa, they've literally been driving around the state, and you'll hear in the episode that they've logged somewhere around 16,000 miles or 20,000 miles together during this campaign season. And so we wanted to check back in with them and see what's happened since we last spoke and what they expect for these final 2 weeks of the campaign. We were able to speak with Fred and Kimberly by phone today as they left Oklahoma City to head back out on the campaign trail. So we're joined now by Fred Dorrell and Kimberly Fobbs, who are running for Labor Commissioner and Insurance Commissioner, respectively. How are you guys doing?
Good, Andy. Thanks for speaking with us.
Sure.
Doing well. Thank you, Andy.
So we spoke a few weeks ago, and you guys have been out on the campaign trail ever since then. What's been new out in the field? What are you hearing from voters?
I think it's very exciting. Definitely at the grassroots level, we are hearing voters of all types, party, economic status, and geography that are really engaged and wanting to know who is running for office, what we stand for. I think it's really a good sign that voters are willing to take the time to not just see a name on a ballot, but to understand who the people are that want to represent them. I personally had the first opportunity to be at a forum. It wasn't a debate, but a forum side by side with my opponent, and the differences couldn't be more stark in terms of what we both have to offer, and I'm very encouraged by the response that we received.
Excellent. Fred, how about you?
One of the things that's become apparent is it seems that people measure things on money raised, it seems. My opponent is probably raised close to $1 million by now. I don't know what the latest reporting is. In which, the challenge is, some are advocating or they're trying to raise money, and I guess what I've been trying to do is raise awareness and the importance of making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's become apparent. There's two different there's distinguishable differences between my platform or my position and my opponents. But I think talking to people, it becomes clear.
Sure. Now, I know that there's been a lot of discussion, especially on the national level, about how much money Democrats have raised this year, that they've had a good year, and arguably Republicans have had a bad year raising money. And I think some of that probably extends to, like the Senate race in Texas and high-profile races like that. Do you guys feel like here at the kind of the grassroots state level for you that money will play as big of a role as it does in some of those higher profile races?
I think it does a little bit in our races. We are both statewide candidates who are running against career politicians that have had a long-standing relationship with corporations and lobbyists funding their campaign. So at the grassroots level, both of our competitors have their pockets lined with outside interests. But what is clear is that the voters are saying is that they don't want people who've been part of the last 8 years of dragging Oklahoma down, and being a career politician is detrimental. So they've got more money than we do, but I believe we've got the people on our side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the challenge is a down ballot. The primary focus has been on, say, for example, the governor, Senate, legislative races, and I know the Labor Commissioner, most people don't understand exactly the functions, roles, and responsibilities, and that's clearly spelled out in the statutes. It's something that's important. So, I mean, trying to get that message out, but again, it takes money to do that. So I think it's effectiveness, I'm passionate. I know Kimberly's passionate, and when you see the interaction of the folks, that's kind of the driving force. But again, it's hard to combat, when someone's combating money in the sense that you're raising money to get your message out. And like Kimberly said, people don't want more of the same. Now, we'll see when it comes election day.
Sure. Well, so you guys kind of speak to the not just the financial gap, but the enthusiasm gap that may exist between parties. And being statewide candidates, it's a little tough to go out and knock doors of 4 million Oklahomans. So how do you guys get the word out to voters?
Well, I think, and I've said this before, but it seems to be they would rather instill fear than faith, and hate rather than hope. And there has to be a bad guy, and Democrats or this or that, and they keep going the negative. In my mind, sometimes it's not like they have a lot to say, so they just want to throw the same old things that come out, and people get sidetracked on that. So I think there should be some discussion, debate, talking about the issues at hand, talking about what's important to Oklahomans, but also listening to what they have to say. My opponent talks about it's just safety and policy and licensing, and just kind of really simplifies or downplays the functions, roles, and responsibilities of what the labor commissioner should be doing. So that's one aspect.
Well, and we definitely are using more of current technology, digital media, and digital ways to get our message out. But I want to underscore the point again. There's a reason labor commissioner and insurance commissioner, at least on our ticket, are so intertwined. Both of us represent roles that people only think about us when something bad happens. And when we were with you the last time, we talked about Pauls Valley Hospital, which since then the hospital was shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But the employees have reached out to us, and there is a current crisis, a labor and insurance commissioner issue that is still unresolved. The employees of that hospital had payroll deductions taken out for their health and medical insurance and life insurance that wasn't actually applied. And so as a labor commissioner, they're asking, where did our money go? Why wasn't it applied? And they don't have the benefits they need. We have consumers every single day that are in the same situations, that their money isn't right, their benefits aren't right, and it's when something bad happens, they need somebody that's going to fight for them. And that's what we've been able to do, and that message is getting out no matter where we go.
Sure. Well, and I was going to ask you guys about two other kind of specific issues that, and they might both pertain to both of you, but Kimberly, I was going to ask you specifically about the impending rollout, but the startup of the annual marketplace insurance enrollment period that will begin November 1st here in Oklahoma. And have people been talking about marketplace, about the Affordable Care Act, about Obamacare, whatever you want to call it? Has that been a topic you're hearing from consumers?
To a certain extent, and I'll really break it down because there are some misconceptions. For years, there's been rhetoric that has scared people into blaming everything wrong with our healthcare system in Oklahoma on the Affordable Care Act. And we know even before it was implemented, our people didn't have access to quality coverage and people couldn't afford it. So part of it is that. Part of it is that we've also limited the access to navigators, people who have the ability to help consumers find the right product for them. And then finally, we're still in a situation where 38% of working low-income Oklahomans do not have health care, as opposed to 26% on the national average. So we've got to change the narrative that everything that's wrong with our state is a result of the Affordable Care Act. Are there pockets where people's premiums, because of where we are and are not taking subsidies, causing problems? Absolutely, yes. but our healthcare system needs as many choices and not fewer choices. And we run into people every single day that don't have access to healthcare, can't get sooner care, have trouble with Medicaid and Medicare. And so the entirety of the system, not just the Affordable Care Act, is what we need to address through advocacy.
Sure. It's I work in healthcare, and as my colleagues are gearing up for open enrollment, I think it's been fresh in our minds, and I feel like it changes a little bit every year. My understanding is that we may have a second insurer, another insurance company, offering plans through the marketplace this year. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, we do have a second insurer, but I think what is even more important is for consumers to understand that the penalty for not having the Affordable Care Act has been removed through the tax process. So that is no longer an issue for people to worry about.
Oh, right. Yeah. So you don't get penalized if you don't have insurance.
Correct.
Sure. Fred, question for you. Since we last spoke, we've found out that the employees of the State Department of Health have decided to file a lawsuit against the department, against the state, for wrongful termination. And I don't have a specific question, but just I would like to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't have all the specifics in front of me to speak to it directly, but what I will say this is, and I've alluded to this before, state employees should not be treated any different. They have rights. They should be treated with dignity and respect. And the games that have been played that I've heard of, it's ridiculous. So, I mean, again, it comes back to disposable workforce, and we've got to stop that. And state employees haven't had an increase, generally speaking, in the last 10 years. Subject matter experts, all of those, it's hard to keep and retain. And from the Department of Mental Health, the reductions that I've heard about and what they've done, it's ridiculous. We need to start treating our people with value, dignity, and respect, and instead of, because they're state employees, we just get rid of them. Right.
So I know that membership of unions and trade organizations has been pretty steadily decreasing over time in our state. Why do you think that is?
Well, the decrease is everything's been about, number one is manufacturing. The jobs, there's not been areas where you would normally see a high population of unions, the types of jobs. One of the things we have here, I hear this about talking about jobs all the time. We don't need just jobs. We need good paying jobs. And we need jobs where it matters, where people can go and have an opportunity to grow. And at the same time, looking at a fair living, or living wage, those are the things that's going to attract those kinds of jobs. And, an increase in minimum wage is not just good for the employee, but it's good for the economy. It's good for the state of Oklahoma. But as far as the unions go, you're starting to see that increase in some ways. But again, that depends on the organization. It depends on how people how they treat the employees. If you treat your employees with dignity and respect, you provide a safe work environment, you pay them a decent wage, and give them a method or a way to address their grievances, if you will, then it's highly unlikely that people are going to organize. But when you start, health and safety issues, when you start, shorten them, there's not a parity or there's not a sense of fairness, then they have no other way to turn, and they want, all they want is justice, and they don't feel like they're getting it. Or when you've got discriminatory employment practices, those kinds of things. Those are the things is what makes people want to join or form and join unions.
Sure. And this is just a personal question, but you kind of alluded to this, that typically we see unions occurring like among lower wage workers or, blue collar workers or whatever. Why don't we see more of that among like professionals or white collar workers? I can imagine something in a scenario like higher education, where faculty may have great jobs, but there's also a big divide or a big kind of line in the sand between the faculty and the administration. There may be legal reasons for this, but really just kind of enlighten me however you can.
Well, a couple of things. We do have, you got the American Medical Association is one form. You've got the American Bar Association, but to your point, when you have a disposable workforce, or where you've got people, I've heard of situations where, even the threat of forming a union, they focus more on getting rid of the employee than to say, okay, what's the problem? Why would you want to do that? Comes back to someone thinks because you understand something, you agree with it. So, companies, I talk to them all the time, about unionization. There's this big paranoia. And again, you got to have workers to have business and business to have workers. And it's not rocket science. It's rocket science to know that you treat your people right, they're going to engage. Now, there's always going to be exceptions. Got that. But that's all the way around. So, I'm starting to hear more and more talk about people wanting to form unions. And again, they're, even within the union environment, it depends on, they're just a reflection of their leadership. And just like we are in a democracy, we're a reflection of the people we put in office. And we can put some knuckleheads in there, and people are going to think, well, that's a knucklehead state. Same thing applies. The union is simply a democracy within. The people are the ones that dictate what they want or what they don't want to the leadership. The leadership is just representative, much like what we have.
Sure. I think I'd like to see the word knucklehead used more often in state politics. That word makes me chuckle every time. So I want to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about what, just like some questions about you guys and to help our listeners gain a better understanding about what happens out on the campaign trail and maybe who you guys are as people. So what could you each share maybe we'll say the most humorous or do this way, the most unexpected experience you've had during this campaign so far?
Wow, Fred's looking at me, so I guess I go first. I'm going to actually answer that in two ways. The most unexpected would have been, and also one of the most positive, was early on, we went to Haskell County, and it was a huge crowd, maybe 200 people there. And at the beginning of it, it was really kind of a chilly reception with regard to who I am as a person and my candidacy. Mm-hmm. And by the time it was over, I just couldn't stop shaking enough hands of people relating to why I was running, understanding what my commitment was to serve, and it underscored the point that it didn't matter your party, it didn't matter your race or your gender or your economic circumstances, that everybody has a need and an insurance story to tell, and they knew that I was genuine about doing what was right for the people of Oklahoma. So it went from a very unfriendly room to one of the warmest receptions that I received, and it was what encouraged me to keep on this path across the state. And I'll follow that up by, we went to a rodeo in the middle of the summer / cookout in Freedom, Oklahoma, mm-hmm. with a bunch of cowboys, and I was dressed in all white because I didn't know any better, but I had a good time, and the people were warm and friendly. And I think that's the message, is rural Oklahoma especially is near and dear to my heart and to my need to serve, because too much of our state is being left behind and ignored. And that's what encourages us to keep moving forward.
Sure. Fred, what about you? What's been unexpected for you?
Well, as I'm, sitting here, there's been several that come to mind. Surprising, I guess. To use the Freedom Rodeo as an example, in that particular instance, there was, say, a cowboy, and I mean that with respect. I mean, I don't know if he was a bull rider or bronc rider, but he had one of them, like an award shirt that he was wearing, and there's a bunch of people around, so it went up, and he said, "So you're running for labor commissioner?" And first thing he said, "So you get rid of them blankety blank unions?" And I said, "Well, no, sir." I said, "People have a right to form and join unions." I said, then he went on, and he goes, "So what's your background?" And I said, "Well," told him I was labor relations specialist at the Spirit and Company and blah, blah, blah. And he had this, he asked a couple of questions, said about a fair wage and different things. He goes, "By God, I'll pay my nephew what the hell I want to pay him. Ain't no government going to tell me what to do." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, that's fine, because the minimum wage doesn't apply to you because you're exempt from it."
Right.
But he just wanted to kind of like he wanted to fight. And so I looked at him and I said, "So, part of the problem I said, I'd ask him, I said, "So what is, you sound angry. What is your concern here? What's your issue on this?" And he said, "Well, he had heard from rumors, people that worked in unions made $30, $40, $50 an hour, and they don't do a damn thing."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I don't really know of anybody that makes that, and unless it's a specialty trade or something along that line. But as far as working," I said, "that's not the case in any of the facilities I've worked in." And I said, "So, a lot of it's just kind of understanding." And so he kind of kept going. I said, "So let me ask you a question." I said, "Just because someone wears a cowboy hat does that mean they're a cowboy?" And he kind of looked at me and said, "Well, no." And of course, Kimberly's like, and Wes is with us, and they're like, "Oh my God." And I said, "Well, it's just like because somebody wears a watch doesn't mean they know how to tell time." And then he got it. He got to say what he wanted to say in the frustration. But that was kind of surprising, and it was kind of, you just got to talk to people like your people. That's what it all came down to. It wasn't confrontational. It wasn't combative. I let him get his frustrations out. But I think one thing that stands out that's kind of a little funny is that, so I go into the black community, into a black function, and so they see this white boy walking in, and they're kind of looking at him like, okay. And I'm really kind of a shy guy. I mean, I know that's hard for a lot of people to believe, but so we're speaking, so I get up there, and so I did my speech and came down, and it was so funny because they all came up to me afterwards and were shaking my hand and said, "Man, you ought to be a here we go." And it was just like the ones that were totally looking at me like, "Okay, what are you doing here?" or what, and they realized that I'm just me. I just speak from the heart, and I've had people tell me that, I don't have any preconceived notion of what really I'm going to say. It just, there it is. So, I mean, and there's all kinds of other little ones. Watch, I'll think of some real good ones after we hang up.
Well, I think that kind of what you said there is that authenticity matters to voters, and I think I've heard that from a lot of voters that we've spoken with as well, just kind of in the course of doing stuff with Let's Fix This, that people don't, it doesn't always require someone who's shiny and polished. Sometimes someone who is a good-hearted person that genuinely cares about the state is maybe who they are drawn towards.
Yeah, they're definitely tired of the political double talk this year. They want real answers.
Yeah. So what are you guys doing for election night? Are you guys going to be in Tulsa? You've got plans here. I know here in the city, or the each party has a big party. But what are your plans for watching the results come in?
Yes, this is Kimberly. As part of Tulsa County, we are hosting, along with multiple candidates, an all-in watch party at the Jazz Hall of Fame. So every campaign will be hosting their friends and constituents, but we'll be in a shared space. Hopefully it'll be lots of fun, lots of positive energy, and a good time will be had by most.
Nice. Fred, are you going to be there with her, or are you doing your own thing?
Well, we have our own watch party. We'll be in the same building.
Okay.
So that was, I got to tell you something that's kind of funny. The other day we were coming back from an event, and this lady calls, and there had been a lit drop, and she's leaving a message on the phone, and she's reading it. Says, Fred Dorrell, I really like your information, and she goes through it, and she goes, very impressed, did a great job, and she goes, I sure hope you're a Republican. Or she goes, I don't know what party you are, but I sure hope you're a Republican. So, I'm thinking, okay, you get all these flattering compliments, and then all of a sudden it's now party matters.
Right.
And it was like, okay.
That's funny. That is a funny example. And I don't know how to combat that aside from dropping party labels altogether. That sounds nice. What do you wish that voters knew? Well, hang on. Let me ask it this way. What nugget of advice do you have for other folks out there who are considering running for statewide office someday?
Well, I think is be who you are, not who somebody wants you to be. And as I said early on when I started this journey, and I probably confused some people because, I'm a registered Democrat, but I'm Fred Dorrell. And people that know me and know who I am and know what I'm about, they know that. And it's not about party, it's not about label, it's about the people. And people that know me know that. They've seen me. And I think you got to be true to yourself. You don't say what people want to hear because it's convenient. You say what you believe, and if you don't know something, you tell people you don't know. If you believe in something, then you tell them. But I think most importantly is to listen, because if you go out there thinking that you have all the answers and you're going to be a fix it quick, you're going to be for a rude awakening. So, some people want immediate answers. Well, there's not always an immediate answer to a complex situation, because one spins over into another. And that's why, you have to accept the fact that you got to partner with people, you got to work with people, but more importantly, be transparent. And when people are transparent, then I think things go a lot smoother.
Sure.
And my answer would be, to the question of someone who's thinking of running for statewide office, I'll compare and contrast some of the people that we've seen. Fred and I are in it because we're here to serve Oklahoma and to make it better for people. But we've also run into candidates for statewide office that view the position as a stepping stone to their next political career, or they've tasked that certain jobs look easy enough that they think they can do it after leaving the legislature. And those aren't the reasons to run for statewide office. We believe that there are 4 million people that we are accountable to and that should evaluate our job performance. And those are the people and the citizens of Oklahoma. And if you aren't running for office because you take that responsibility to serve, number one, as your primary and only responsibility, I think you're running for the wrong reason. And it's a tough and long road. Wish we'd gotten the race a little sooner, but we've worked really hard. We've met many great people, and so many people have asked us for help in our respective roles. The fact that they need somebody that will listen and truly do what they say they will do, that's why you hold this office. This is a public trust. It's not a career promotion.
I think that last line is really interesting, especially right now, because we have such anti-incumbent energy and just folks that want outsiders, right? And we can go on whether or not that's right or wrong. I think it depends on who the candidate is. Just because you haven't done a certain job doesn't mean you'd be good or bad at it. I know that I don't want someone walking in off the street thinking they can be a brain surgeon. I also don't want someone walking out the street thinking they can be, labor commissioner or insurance commissioner. But as you said, in some cases, having someone who has been on the inside of politics for a number of years isn't necessarily a better move, right?
No, I agree. I think you get into groupthink that way. I mean, I would encourage people, look at the resumes, look at the experience, look at the background. What makes you think, and that, I'll have people ask me, why do you want to be labor commissioner? What makes you think? What's your, basically your past, your background? And then when I tell them and explain to them, or I simply tell them about it, they get it. And that's what we need to do is, regardless if you're running for office or not, is before you vote, you mark somebody, the ballot, what qualifies them to be who they want to be, or the job they want to run for. And it's a public servant. You're there to represent and to listen and represent all the people, because when you get elected, doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, you can take the labels off, you can take the party off. You're there to represent the people of Oklahoma, not just the Democrats, not just the Republicans or the independents. It's everybody. And oftentimes people lose sight of how they got where they're at, because then all of a sudden the party. And, we've had enough of that the last 8 years, and it should be about the people.
How many miles have you guys traveled so far this year?
Well, last count was over 16,000, probably closer to 20-some thousand, I would guess, 20,000, I'm thinking. I don't know. I'm afraid to look at the mileage.
Have you guys divided that between your vehicles, or are you taking the same vehicle everywhere you go?
No, it's been both, but one of us has a bigger vehicle than the other, so I'm the co-pilot generally.
Yeah, one of us knows directions better than the other one.
What's the best food you've eaten as you've traveled the state?
Ooh, good question.
That is a good question. There's been in different areas. I'm trying to think. You go to different, you can say Mexican food, and
yeah, you can break it down if you want. Best burger, best taco.
I was going to say, gosh, I remember what town we were in. Was it Alva? I think I ate an entire ribeye by myself, and it was amazing.
No, that was in Guyman.
That was in
Guyman.
Okay.
Yeah, they brought this steak out, and the steak was bigger than she was, and I looked, and I think, and one of my guys was with me and had driven us, and we're looking at her, and Wes is a big boy, and he looks at that, and he's thinking, okay, is she going to eat that? And she did a pretty good job on it. So, yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, it's good enough that you both remember it.
Yeah, well, I remember the fact, I mean, my steak was good, but I got a filet. She got and we very seldom eat steak. So we thought, well, we'd treat ourselves to a steak because we'd been at the fair. And, sometimes what you do in going along and campaign trail, you forget to eat. I mean, I've lost 55 pounds since I started this campaign. And you can see that if you're walking and talking and knocking on doors, but we do a lot of walking and a lot of talking, but it's not like, your state representatives or state senators that are candidates that are running and knocking doors.
Yeah, I
forget to eat sometimes.
Right, yeah. I saw somebody the other day here in Oklahoma City that had knocked on their 3,000th or 4,000th door or something, and I think the tales from the streets like that, from you guys on the road or from folks knocking doors, to me as a voter are interesting. I like to know what my fellow Oklahomans care about, what they're saying. Also, I've been someone who works with people my whole life, and so any of the funny stories that you end up with are always great fodder for conversation.
Yeah. We've been in horse barns and hoedowns. We've been in pouring rain. We've been in the mud. We have been all over this state.
So,
and to your point, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, to your point, we've talked to a lot of candidates as we go along, statewide as well as district wide or state representative, and the interesting point you brought up, you can have a platform or you can have what you believe, but when you talk to people, you're knocking on those doors, you go into these small communities and people come up, you hear the real stories about the real problems, the real issues. This isn't something that somebody made up, and it may not even be on somebody's radar. That's where you connect, because you don't have it's up to you and them. You have to have big boy or big girl britches on to answer those questions, to deal with it, and if you don't know the answer, to get back with them. And people can tell when you're sincere, and people can tell when you're just BSing them.
Right.
And that's where the rubber meets the road, and they see your heart, or they see if you're in it for the right reason.
So let's first question is, let's assume that you guys both win. What is the first thing you're going to do day one in the office?
Talk to the people.
I think, Kimberly and I have talked about it, to walk in, I think first would just sit down and, find out what's working, what's not working, kind of get a feel of, your staff, what's needed, and make plans, get feedback. I mean, for someone to say that they're going to walk in and do this or do that is kind of ludicrous, in the sense that you got to, just be like if you applied for a job somewhere and you've got the expertise in the background, and the first thing you need to do is kind of get established in the sense of, your desk and your roles and, where certain things are. But I think more importantly is get the staff and have honest feedback. What is, you got to work with people. I would have the responsibility of being the labor commissioner, but more importantly, try to treat my people with dignity and respect, and let them know that they're important and that they matter, and what they have to say matters. And because you got to work as a team. Yeah, there's one person that has the leadership role and responsibility, but you get more out of people when you treat them that way. And people that have worked for me in the past, and one of the greatest compliments that I've had from a number of people is that nobody works for Fred, they work with Fred. And I can't personally and professionally think of a better compliment, because that's what it should be all about.
Yeah.
Your people is who makes you who you are, and they're, in my view, your number one asset.
Sure. So let's say a question that I'm sure you guys have thought about. Let's say you don't win. What's first on your plate in that scenario?
Well, first of all, we have one goal and one goal only as candidates, and that's what we're focused on for the next 14 days. But you're right. You don't get into a statewide race without looking at both options. What I will say is I believe every step that you take leads you to your purpose in life. And if, for example, either one of us or both of us is not victorious on November the 7th, it still involves thanking everybody that put their trust in us, their belief in us. We both have people that have come to us with problems right now they need help with, and we've been working through that. That won't stop on November 7th, either way it goes, because what is clear is that the people of our state have not been heard. There's a disconnect between our elected leaders and the needs of the people. And if we don't win, and I believe we both will, we still have an obligation to serve, and that won't stop. It may look a little different, but it won't stop. And the thing I just want to really encourage is, I'm a woman of color. I've heard this is the blue wave year, this is the year of the woman. I want this to be the year of the people, and I'm encouraging everyone out there, don't just vote for a candidate because of their gender. Don't just vote for a candidate because of their age. Vote for the person who's actually the best representative of your needs and the people, and look into who that is, because there are some really great candidates of all ages, all races, and all genders, and they deserve to have people vote for them based off of who they are and not what demographic they represent.
Sure.
Well, and I share a lot of those same feelings, and I think obviously that's a reality in any contest. There's going to be a winner and a loser, but But I believe that it's a win in the sense of the people that I've met, the lives that have touched me, the people that I've made contact with, the things I've learned. I'm still learning about things, and at my age, at 64, I think is a testament of what we all should do in the sense of, being open to learning. This journey will be over, but another journey begins, because my whole focus and goal is to be a servant and to work. Now, what direction that might be in, I don't know. But, there's a lot of people that will probably come up and tell you what you did wrong, what you did right. There's always those Monday morning quarterbacks. But what I keep in mind is why I did what I did, and that was because of what I believe and who I'm doing it for, to try to make a difference. And if they choose not to put me in office, then, so be it. I'll live with those consequences, the results, be supportive. I mean, I'm not going to like it, but I'm not going to throw a fit. Life goes on, and there'll be another journey that I'll go down and where I can make a difference. So, as I said early on, I have a job, so I'm not running for a job. I'm running to make a difference. And, I'm going to give it my all.
Yeah. So regardless of whether or not you win or lose, what happens on November 7th? You wake up on Wednesday and you're not campaigning. What are you going to do?
Sleep. That's a good question. I thought of it. I'll just probably sleep, kind of relax. But I don't know. I mean, in all seriousness, when you get in the mode of going, and every day, and especially the last few weeks, it would be weird, because all of a sudden now you don't have an event to go to, or you don't have this, you don't have that. So I'm sure that there would be a lull. I hope that, my goal is not to be at that lull. There'll be a lot of people, like I said, a lot of advisors say, well, if you'd have raised more money, and if you'd have done this, and my thing is, when I got into this, people would talk about that, and I thought, I didn't know this job was for sale. I thought it was, elected by the most votes. The way I look at it is, if I don't, then I didn't get enough votes. But there'll be those that say you didn't get enough money and whatever.
Right.
Well, and conversely, we have a very fine age spirit that we only get to enjoy when we win. So that's my goal.
I know I talked to a lot of reporters lately that are all looking forward to the 7th just to be done with the election cycle.
Oh yeah.
Well,
that's it's kind of like asking, what would I do if I had a full head of hair? I don't know. I don't have full head of hair, so that's a joke.
That's a funny joke.
Because you've met me.
I have met you, and I couldn't come up with a appropriate or good enough response. So, well, maybe we will end on that note. Kimberly and Fred, thank you so much for your time, and good luck. You got 2 weeks. We're recording this on the 23rd, so you've got 2 weeks left until Election Day. I'm sure this will be some of the busiest weeks that you've had in your campaign experience, and I wish you both the best.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. Enjoyed it.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Remember, you can connect with us on Twitter and Instagram at Let's Fix This OK. Scott is at SC Melson, and Andy is at AndyOKC. You can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Let's Fix This OK. Our website is letsfixthisok.org, and there you can sign up for our newsletter, read our blog, find resources and details about upcoming events. Our podcast is edited and produced by Scott and me, and Let's Fix This is a member of the Mostly Harmless Media Network. Our theme music is generously provided by the Sugar Free All-Stars. Let's Fix This is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization who strives to educate and equip all Oklahomans to engage with their government. We encourage you to get involved in any way that you can, and remember, decisions are made by those who show up.